Hello students, I hope you all are doing good. Today we are going to discuss JEE PYQs of chapter Ray Optics and Optical Instruments. This is a disclaimer. So by the end of this session, you will have a solid understanding of how light interacts with mirrors and lenses. We'll explore key concepts like image formation, magnification, and length of power. So let's delve into the specifics of ray optics. We will start by examining how light behaves when it encounters mirrors and lenses. Pay attention to terms like magnification and lens power, as they are crucial for understanding how images are formed. We will also discuss how light deviates through prisms, focusing on the concept of minimum deviation, and explore the phenomenon of apparent depth in multi-layered media. These concepts are not only fascinating but also have practical applications in everyday optical instruments. So first question, the problem involves understanding the behavior of light as it passes through a prism, including the angles of incidence, deviation, and emergence. The problem tests the understanding of the relationship between the angle of incidence, angle of deviation, and angle of emergence in the context of a prism. It also examines the concept of refractive index, which is a measure of how much light bends when it enters a material. In experiment, it was found that a ray is incidenting at an angle 35 degree on one face of prism, and after deviating through 40 degree, it emerges out at angle 79 degree. You have to find the maximum possible value of refractive index out of given 4 options. So options are A 1.7, B is 1.8, C is 1.5, and D is 1.6. So let's begin by examining the given data for the experiment. We have 3 key angles to consider: the angle of incidence, angle of emergence, and angle of deviation. Okay, so first we have angle of incidence denoted as I, which is given as 35 degrees. This is the angle at which the light ray enters the prism. So we have the angle of emergence denoted as E, which is 79 degrees. This is the angle at which light rays exits the prism after refraction. Finally, the angle of deviation denoted as delta is 40 degrees. This is the angle by which the light rays are deviated from its original path due to refraction within the prism. Now let's determine the angle of prism A. This can be calculated using the relationship between the angle of incidence, emergence, and deviation. Understanding this relationship is crucial for finding the refractive index. The formula we will use is derived from the principles of ray optics. It's important to understand how these angles interact to affect the path of light through the prism. So the formula is delta equal to I plus E minus A. This is the key equation from the NCERT textbook, specifically equation 9.35. It helps us relate the angles to find the prism's angle. By rearranging the formula, we can solve for the angle of prism A. This gives us A equals I plus E minus delta. This step is crucial for our calculations. So to start solving, we need to calculate the prism's angle. We will substitute the given values into the formula. This step is crucial as it helps us understand the geometry of the prism, which is essential for determining the refractive index. Here we apply the formula A equals to 35 degree plus 79 degree minus 40 degree. This equation helps us find the prism angle, which is a key component in calculating the refractive index. Notice how each angle contributes to the final calculation. After performing the calculation, we find the angle A is 74 degrees. This value is important because it directly influences the refractive index calculations. Next, we focus on calculating the refractive index denoted as mu. We will use the formula for minimum deviation, which is standard method in optics. Understanding this formula is crucial for accurately determining the refractive index. The formula for refractive index is mu equals to sine A plus delta M by 2 upon sine A by 2. This is the equation from NCERT textbook, specifically equation 9.38. Each part of the formula plays a role in determining how the light bends through the prism. So delta M represents the angle of minimum deviation here. So the first step in solving this problem is to recognize that the minimum deviation angle denoted by delta M is less than or equal to 40 degrees. This is crucial because the minimum deviation angle is a key factor in calculating the refractive index of the prism. So in this particular case, we are considering that given deviation of 40 degrees as the minimum deviation. Okay, so minimum deviation can be equal to or less than 40 degree, but in this question we are considering it as 40 degree. Okay, this assumption allows us to proceed with determining the maximum possible refractive index. Now let's substitute the values into the formula for refractive index. We have the angle of the prism A as 74 degrees and the minimum deviation delta M as 40 degrees. These values will help us calculate refractive index using the formula. So the formula for the refractive index, mu equal to sine A plus delta M by 2 upon sine A by 2. Now by substituting the values, we get mu equals to sine 74 degree plus 40 degree by 2 upon sine 74 degree by 2. So after simplifying the expression, we find that mu equals to sine 57 degree upon sine 37 degrees. This step involves using trigonometry function to find the sine values of the angles, which will give us the refractive index. So we use the formula for refractive index, which is given by the ratio of sine of angle of emergence to the sine of angle of incidence. Okay, so that is the formula for finding refractive index when a refraction is happening through one phase. Okay, so here we have the equation mu equals to sine of 57 degrees divided by sine of 37 degrees. Now let's approximate values of sine of these angles. The sine of 57 degrees is approximately equal to 0.8387 and sine 37 degrees is approximately equal to 0.6018. So therefore, by substituting the approximate sine values into our equation, we find that the refractive index mu is approximately equal to 0.8387 divided by 0.6018, which equals 1.4. So however, it is important to note that we assume that deviation angle delta to be 40 degrees, which might not be the case. It can be less than, minimum deviation angle can be less than 40 degree. This assumption affects our calculation and we need to consider the possibility of different maximum deviation angle. Therefore, considering the potential variation in deviation angle, the maximum possible value of refractive index is likely to be closer to 1.5. Okay, so next question. In this problem, concave mirror is given of focal length 0.4 meter. In order to see your erect image in the mirror with magnification equals to 5. At what distance you should hold the mirror from your face? Okay, so this question requires applying the mirror formula and magnification concept to determine the correct distance to hold the mirror for a specific magnification. You need to choose the correct option out of given 4 options. So options are A 0.24 meter, B 1.60 meter, C 0.32 meter and D 0.16 meter. So correct option is C 0.32 meter. So now let's look at the information given in the problem. So we know the focal length of the concave mirror is 0.4 meters. So we have the magnification, which is given as 5. This tells us how much larger the image appears compared to the object. So magnification is given equal to 5. And now we will calculate the object distance. Okay, so since it is a concave mirror, so focal length will be taken as negative, because for concave mirror, focus lies on the left side of the mirror. Okay, and according to sign convention, we measure all the distances from pole of the mirror. That's why focal length will be taken as negative, that is minus 0.4 meter. Okay, for an upright image formed by the concave mirror, the image is virtual. Concave mirror always forms, except one case. It always forms real and inverted image, except one case when object is placed between focus and pole. Then it will form the erect and virtual image. So for an upright image formed by the concave mirror, image is virtual and the magnification is positive. So to solve this, we need to use the magnification formula for mirrors. This formula will help us relate the image distance and the object distance. So magnification formula is given by m equals to minus v upon u. Here m is the magnification, v is the image distance and u is the object distance. Okay, and this formula is according to NCERT equation 9.9. So in this formula, v is the image distance and u is the object distance. So let's substitute the given magnification into the formula. We have 5 equals to minus v upon u. So we are taking magnification as positive because we want to see our erect and virtual image. So we can rearrange to find v equals to minus 5u. This relationship will help us determine the exact distances needed to achieve the desired magnification. Okay, to solve the problem, we need to use the mirror formula, which is crucial in ray optics. And this formula is according to NCERT equation 9.7. The formula is 1 upon f equals to 1 upon v plus 1 upon u, where f is the focal length, v is the image distance and u is the object distance. So let's substitute the given values into the formula. The focal length f is minus 0.4 meter because it is a concave mirror, and magnification tells us the image distance v is minus 5 times the object distance u. The negative sign indicates that image is virtual and upright. So substituting this value in the mirror formula, we get 1 upon minus 0.4 equals to 1 upon minus 5u plus 1 upon u. This equation allows us to find the object distance u, which is distance at which you should hold the mirror from your face. Now we'll simplify the right side of the equation by factoring out 1 upon u. We have 1 upon minus 0.4 equals to 1 upon u multiplied by 1 upon minus 5 plus 1. This simplification helps us isolate u and solve the exact distance needed. Now here we are starting with the equation 1 upon f equals to 1 upon u plus 1 upon v. Okay, and now after putting the values and rearranging the equation, we have come to this step, that minus 1 upon minus 0.4 equal to 1 upon u multiplied by 1 upon minus 5 plus 1. So now 1 upon minus 0.4 equal to 1 upon u, and after taking LCM, we have reached this step 1 minus 1 upon 5 plus 5 upon 5. We can write 1 equal to 5 upon 5 taking LCM. Now solving further, 1 upon minus 0.4 and minus 1 upon 5 plus 5 upon 5. It will become 4 upon 5. So 1 upon u multiplied by 4 upon 5. So rearranging the equation to solve for u, So this involves isolating u on one side of the equation. Pay attention to how we manipulate the equation to make u the subject. So now we substitute the values into the rearranged equation to calculate u. The multiplication here shows the focal length and magnification factor into determining the object distance. So u will become equals to minus 0.4 into 4 upon 5. Okay, so we calculate the object distance as minus 0.32 meter. The negative sign indicates that the object is placed in front of the mirror, which is typical for real objects. This result aligns with the properties of concave mirror. Negative sign for u confirms that object is indeed in front of the mirror, consistent with the real object scenario. This is an important concept in ray optics. Finally, we conclude the mirror should be held 0.3 meters from the face to achieve the desired magnification. The distance ensures the image is upright and magnified correctly. So this is the question related to the magnification of compound microscope. The problem involves calculating the focal length of the eyepiece needed to achieve a specific magnification. The question requires applying the formula for magnification in a compound microscope. You need to identify the given values. Magnification is equal to 375, tube length 150 millimeter, and focal length of the objective is given 5 millimeters. And use this to find the focal length of the eyepiece. You need to choose the correct option out of given 4 options. So first option is 22 millimeter, B option is 12 millimeter, C option is 2 millimeter, D option is 33 millimeter. So correct option is A, 22 millimeters. So now let's dive into the solution. First we list the given values. We know the magnification denoted as M is 375. Okay, magnification is equal to 375. Then tube length is equal to 150 millimeter, that is 15 centimeter. Focal length of the objective lens f0 is equal to 0.5 centimeter. And formula for magnification is given. M equal to L upon f0 1 plus D upon Fe, where M is the total magnification, L is the tube length, f0 is the focal length of the objective lens, D is the least distance of distinction, or we can say near point, and Fe is the focal length of the eyepiece. So as D is the near point, usually taken as 250 millimeter, or we can say 25 centimeter. D equal to 250 millimeter equal to 25 centimeter. That is the near point. So now this is the formula for magnification for compound microscope. M equals to L upon f0 multiplied by 1 plus D upon Fe. In this equation, M is the magnification, L is the tube length, f0 is the focal length of the objective lens, Fe is the focal length of eyepiece, and D is the least distance of distinct vision, which is 25 centimeter. So now substitute the known values into our formula. So 375 equals to 15 upon 0.5 multiplied by 1 plus 25 upon Fe. Notice how we converted the tube length from millimeter to centimeter for consistency. So tube length is given 150 millimeter and we wrote it 15 centimeter in centimeters. Okay, so we know the total magnification is 375 and magnification by the objective lens is 30. Okay, so the equation becomes 375 equals to 30 times quantity 1 plus 25 divided by the focal length of the eyepiece Fe. So now we will simplify the equation by dividing 375 by 30. This gives us 12.5, which equals to 1 plus 25 upon Fe. Okay, so 12.5 equals to 1 plus 25 upon Fe. Now we will subtract 1 from 12.5. Okay, and we will rearrange this equation for Fe. Okay, so after solving it, Fe comes out to be approximately 2.1739 centimeter. This calculation shows how the eyepiece contributes to the overall magnification of the microscope. So the calculated focal length of eyepiece is approximately 2.17 centimeters. Okay, so converting centimeter into millimeters. So 1 centimeter is equal to 10 millimeters. So focal length of the eyepiece approximately 21.7 millimeters. Multiply the value given in centimeters by 10 to convert it into millimeters, which is round off to 22 millimeter for simplicity. This rounding is common in practical applications to match standard component sizes or to match the options given. Okay, so focal length of the eyepiece lens should be approximately 22 millimeter to achieve the desired magnification. Now the problem involves understanding how light behaves when passing through different mediums, specifically water and glass. The question asks about the perceived depth of water in a glass tumbler when viewed from above. It tests the concept of refraction, which is bending of light as it passes from one medium to another. Inner depth of glass tumbler is given 17.5 centimeter. A student is pouring water into it. This occurs when light travels from one medium to another, changing speed and direction. The refractive index mu quantifies how much light bends, given as mu equals to 4/3 for water, indicating how much light slows down and bends when entering water from air. Understand that the student perceives the tumbler as half filled due to the bending of light. Okay, the actual depth of water is different from the perceived depth because of refraction. The problem requires calculating the actual depth using the refractive index of water in the tumbler. Okay, so 4 options are given. First option is 11.7 centimeter, second is 10 centimeter, third option is 7.5 centimeter, fourth option is 8.75 centimeter. So correct option is B, 10 centimeters. So this is a figure representing the situation given in the question. So the inner depth of the glass tumbler is 17.5 centimeter. A student is pouring water into it. Okay, so let's suppose he poured water up to h height. Okay, but due to the apparent shift, due to the refraction, bottom of the glass tumbler looks somewhat raised upward. Okay, due to which the height that is visible to student is different from the actual height h. Okay, he feels that the tumbler is half filled. Okay, that means he sees the apparent depth of the water in the tumbler. Or what is the meaning of he feels the tumbler is half filled? We will see further. So look at the given information. We know the total depth of tumbler is 17.5 centimeters. Okay, which is represented by D. So refractive index of water is given as mu equal to 4/3. So let the actual height of the water in the tumbler be h. So let's introduce the formula for apparent depth. H dash equal to h upon mu. This equation helps us how the actual depth h is perceived when viewed from above due to refractive index mu of the medium. In this case, the refractive index of water is 4/3. Okay, so substituting the refractive index into our formula, we get h dash equals to h upon 4 by 3 equals to 3h upon 4. This step shows how the refractive index affects the apparent depth. It's important to note how the division by a fraction simplifies to a multiplication. So let's consider the height of the air column above the water. Okay, so the empty part of the glass tumbler in which water is not poured. Okay, so air column, it's represented by d minus h. D is the total depth of the glass tumbler and h is the height up to which water is poured. So d minus h is the height of the air column, which equals to 17.5 minus h. This is the actual height of the air column, not the perceived depth. Okay, so pay attention to how we calculate the difference. So student perceives the tumbler to be half filled. This means the apparent depth of the water matches the height of the air column. This perception is due to the bending of light, which makes the water appear shallower than it is. Okay, so height of the water is h, which is greater than the height of the air column actually. But what student perceives? It is visible to him that the height of the air column is equal to the height of the water column, or we can say apparent depth of the water in the glass tumbler. That is the meaning of tumbler is half filled. Okay, so therefore 3h upon 4 is equal to 3h upon 4 was the apparent height we calculated, which is equal to the height of the air column 17.5 minus h. So we set up this equation 3h upon 4 equals to 17.5 minus h. This equation represents the apparent depth due to the refraction. The term 3h upon 4 accounts for the refractive index effect, showing how the perceived depth differed from the actual depth. Now we rearrange the equation to combine terms. So 3h upon 4 plus h equals to 17.5. This step helps us isolate the variable h, which represents the actual height of the water in the tumbler. So continuing, we simplify further. 3h plus 4h by taking LCM upon 4 equals to 17.5. So making it easier to solve for h, we combine the terms involving h, making it easier to solve for h. This step is crucial for understanding how the refractive index alters our perception of depth. Now we have 7h upon 4 equals to 17.5. This equation allows us to solve for h directly. By multiplying both sides by h by 4 upon 7, we can find the actual height of the water in the tumbler. So now calculating the value of h after rearranging the equation, h is equal to multiply both sides by 4 upon 7. So it will become h equal to 17.5 multiplied by 4 upon 7. So after simplifying, so h equals to 70 upon 7 equals to 10 centimeter. This shows the actual height of the water in the tumbler is 10 centimeter. So tumbler is actually filled to a height 10 centimeter. Okay. So refractive index of an equilateral prism is given as √2. You have to find the angle of emergence under condition of minimum deviation. Angle should be found in degree. Let's begin by identifying the key properties of an equilateral prism. Since it's equilateral, all its angles are equal, specifically 60 degrees. This is crucial because the angle of prism affects how light is refracted inside it. Under the minimum deviation condition, the angle of incidence equals the angle of emergence. This is a special scenario where the light path through the prism is symmetrical. Next, we need to determine the angle of refraction inside the prism, so which is denoted by R. So according to NCERT question 9.36, the angle of refraction is half the angle of prism. Okay, in which condition? Under the condition of minimum deviation condition, minimum deviation angle. So let's apply the formula to our specific prism. By substituting the known angle of prism, we can calculate the angle of refraction. So using the formula, we find that the angle of refraction is 30 degree. This calculation is straightforward but critical for determining how light exits the prism. So let's apply the Snell's law at the first refracting surface. Snell's law helps us understand how light bends when it moves from one medium to another. So here is the equation from Snell's law: n21 equal to n2 upon n1 equals to sin I upon sin R. And this equation is NCERT question 9.10. So we rearrange Snell's law to n1 sin I equals to n2 sin R. This form is useful for solving problems. We know the refractive indices, and need to find the angles. Remember, n1 and n2 are refractive indices of the surrounding medium and the prism, respectively. So where n1 is the refractive index of the surrounding medium, air, that is n1 equal to 1. For air, refractive index is 1. n2 is the refractive index of the prism, which is given in the question, n2 equal to √2. And I is the angle of incidence and R is the angle of refraction. So again, equation n1 sin I equal to n2 sin R. So n1 equal to 1, n2 equal to √2, and R equal to 30 degree. Okay, so let's substitute these value in the above equation. So substituting the known values into Snell's law, we have 1 multiplied by sin I equal to √2 multiplied by sin 30 degree. Okay. So simplifying further, we find sin I equals to √2 multiplied by 1 upon 2. This step shows how the refractive index and the angle of refraction influence the angle of incidence. So the equation sin I equals to 1 upon square root 2 help us relate the angle of incidence to the refractive index. So now we calculate the angle of incidence, which is 45 degree. This angle is significant because it represents the angle at which light enters the prism under minimum deviation conditions. Okay, so finally under minimum deviation conditions, the angle of emergence E is equal to the angle of incidence. Therefore, the angle of emergence is also 45 degree. This symmetry in angles is a characteristic of the minimum deviation position. And it simplifies our understanding of how light ray travels through the prism. So next question. The question involves a biconvex lens with a given focal length 10 cm that is cut into two identical parts along a plane perpendicular to the principal axis. The problem tests the understanding of how the power of a lens is affected by physical changes to its structure. Key concepts include understanding the relationship between a focal length and lens power, and how cutting a lens affects these properties. So first, let's establish what we know. the focal length of the original lens is given as 10 centimeter, which we convert to meters as 0.1 meter. This conversion is crucial because the power of the lens is typically measured in diopters, which uses focal length in meters. So this is the diagrammatic representation. So this is a biconvex lens and dashed line representing the plane perpendicular to the principal axis along which it will be cut. So its focal length initially is 10 centimeter. To solve this problem, we will use the lens maker's formula. So the lens maker's formula is given by 1 upon f equals to mu minus 1 multiplied by 1 upon r1 minus 1 upon r2. Here f is the focal length, mu is the refractive index of lens with respect to medium. Okay, and r1 and r2 are the radii of curvature. Okay, so where r1 and r2 are radii of curvature. So let's consider the radii of curvature for a biconvex lens. We have two surfaces, one with the radius r1 equals to r and other with r2 equals to minus r. Okay, so sign is according to sign convention. So for first surface, center of curvature lies on the right side. That's why radius of curvature for first surface will be positive. And for second surface, center of curvature is on the left side. So radius of curvature for second surface will be negative. So substituting these values into the lens maker's formula, the formula is 1 upon f mu minus 1 multiplied by 1 upon r1 minus 1 upon r2. Okay, so by substituting r1 and r2, we get 1 upon f equals to mu minus 1 multiplied by 1 upon r minus 1 upon minus r. So after simplifying, we arrive at 1 upon f equals to mu minus 1 multiplied by 2 upon r. This shows how the refractive index mu and the radius r influence the focal length. Notice how the factor of 2 comes into play due to the subtraction of the reciprocals. Now from the simplified equation, we can solve for the focal length f equals to r upon 2 multiplied by mu minus 1. Mark it as first equation. So after cutting the lens, each part becomes a plano-convex lens. This is because the cut is made perpendicular to the principal axis, resulting in two lenses with one flat side and one convex side. This transformation is crucial for understanding how the focal length and power change. So this is a visual representation of after cutting. So after cutting, one surface of lens will become plane and one is convex. Okay. So radii of curvature for curved surface is r and radii of curvature for plane surface is infinity. Now let's focus on plano-convex lens. The formula for focal length of plano-convex lens is slightly different because one side is flat. This distinction is important for calculating the new focal length and power. So the formula for the focal length of plano-convex lens is given by 1 upon f1 equals to mu minus 1 multiplied by 1 upon r minus 1 upon infinity. Okay, so f1 is the focal length of the first plano-convex lens. Okay, and for first surface radius of curvature is r. For second surface, radius of curvature is infinity. Okay, so where r1 is r. Okay, r2 is infinity and f1 is the focal length of the first plano-convex lens. So here we have visual representation of the biconvex lens being cut. Notice how the lens is divided into two identical parts. This image helps us visualize the problem and understand that each half will have its own focal length and power. Okay, so this is the formula for focal length for the first plano-convex lens. And from this, we find f1 equals to r upon 1 upon infinity is 0. Okay, so 1 upon infinity will become 0 and f1 equals to r upon mu minus 1. This expression gives us focal length of one half of the lens. Mark it as second equation. So similarly for the second plano convex lens, okay, so for second plano convex lens, f2 equals to minus r upon mu minus 1. Okay, so in this equation, r is the radius of curvature and mu is the refractive index of the lens material. This formula helps us determine how the curvature of the material properties affect the focal length. So mark it as third equation. So to solve this, we begin by dividing equation 1 by equation 2. So after dividing, we get the equation f upon f1 equals to 1 upon 2. This tells us that focal length of each half f1 is twice the focal length of the original lens. Okay. This is an important relationship that will help us find the power of each half. So next we use the formula for power P equals to 1 upon F. This formula is key because it directly relates the focal length to the power of the lens. So by substituting the expression of power, which is equal to 1 upon F, into the above expression, we find P1 equal to, or P1 upon P equal to 1 upon 2. So P equal to 1 upon F, P1 equal to 1 upon F1. Okay, so after putting these values in the above expression, we got P1 upon P equal to 1 upon 2. Since focal length is reciprocal of power, so ratio of focal length will be reversed. Okay, for power. So this shows that power of each half lens is half the power of the original lens. So we derive 2P1 equals to P. This equation confirms that power of each original lens is twice the power of each half. Or we can say power of each half is half of the power of original lens. So the power of lens denoted as P is given by the formula P equals to 1 upon F, where F is the focal length in meters. Okay, so since the lens is cut into two identical parts, the power of each part P1 is half of the power of original lens. Okay, that means the lens formed after cutting are weaker than original lens in terms of power. Okay, so substituting the formula P equal to 1 upon F, we got P1 equal to 1 upon 2F. This step shows that how power of each half is calculated using the focal length of the original lens. Okay, so since the original focal length is 10 centimeters, or in meters we can say 0.1 meter, we convert it into meters, which is 0.1 meter. So P1 equals to 1 upon 2 multiplied by 0.1. This calculation will give us the power of each half of the lens in diopters. So after performing the calculation, we find P1 equals to 5 diopters. This means each half of the lens has a power of 5 diopters. So the power of each lens after cut is P1 equal to 5 diopter. Now next question, the problem involving ray optics and optical instruments. It describes a scenario with two immiscible means that cannot mix liquids in a beaker, each with different refractive indices and a coin placed at the bottom. This problem tests understanding of apparent depth and diffractive indices in the optics. It involves calculating the apparent depth of the object viewed through the multiple layers of the transparent media. You have two liquids with refractive indices 8 upon 5 and 3 upon 2. Each liquid column has a height of 6 cm. The task is to find the apparent depth of a coin placed at the bottom of the beaker as shown in the diagram. Okay, and what you have to find, the apparent depth will came out to be in the form of alpha upon 4 centimeter. You have to find the alpha in the question. To solve this, we need to understand how light behaves when it passes through different media. The apparent depth of an object viewed through multiple layers is the sum of the apparent depths through each layer. So let's focus on a single layer. The apparent depth through one layer is calculated by dividing the real depth by the refractive index of that layer. This formula helps us determine how much the light bends and how it changes our perception of depth. So let's start by considering the apparent depth through the first liquid layer. This is the layer at the bottom of beaker. Okay, so we have the real depth for the first layer, which is 6 centimeter, and its refractive index 8 upon 5. Okay, so real depth is represented by h1 for first layer and the refractive index is mu1 for the first layer. These values are essential for calculating the apparent depth as they determine how much the light bends when passing through this layer. Okay, now we'll calculate the apparent depth through this layer. This involves using the formula for apparent depth, which is the real depth divided by the refractive index. Okay, so calculation for the apparent depth through the first layer is shown as h dash equals to h1 upon mu1 equals to 6 upon 8 by 5. This equation demonstrates how we apply the formula to find the apparent depth. So now calculating the apparent depth for the first liquid, we use the formula for apparent depth, which is actual depth multiplied by the ratio of refractive index of the second medium. Okay, which is actual depth will be given as, or apparent depth will be given as actual depth upon refractive index of the medium. Okay, here the actual depth is 6 centimeter and the refractive index of the first liquid is 8 by 5. So we calculate the apparent depth as 6 multiplied by 5 upon 8, which is equal to 30 upon 8. So apparent depth h1 dash will be equal to 15 upon 4 centimeter. So this is the depth at which the coin appears to be when viewed through the first liquid. So let's start by considering the apparent depth through the second liquid layer. This is crucial because the refractive index of the liquid affects how we perceive the depth of the coin. Here we have the real depth of the second layer, which is the top layer, is h2 equals to 6 centimeter and its refractive index mu2 equals to 3 upon 2. So now let's calculate the apparent depth through this layer. We use the formula h dash, or we can say h2 dash equals to h2 upon mu2, where h2 is the real depth and mu2 is the refractive index. Substituting the values, we get h2 dash equals to 6 upon 3 by 2. We use the formula for apparent depth. Okay, now we have simplified the equation. We came to h2 dash equals to 6 multiplied by 2 upon 3, which is equal to 12 upon 3. So h2 dash came out to be 4 centimeter. Okay, so this means the coin appeared to be at depth of 4 centimeter when viewed from the second liquid. Notice how refractive index affects the perceived depth, which is less than the actual depth. So now let's focus on the total apparent depth of the coin. This is crucial step because it combines the effect of both liquid layers on the light path. So the total apparent depth is the sum of apparent depth through each liquid layer. This means we need to calculate how each layer individually affects the light before combining them. And we have calculated it. So we introduce the formula for total apparent depth, which is H dash equals to H1 dash plus H2 dash. This equation shows that total apparent depth is the sum of apparent depths through each liquid. So substituting the values, we find that H dash equals to 15 upon 4 plus 4. This calculation involves adding the apparent depths calculated for each liquid layer. So H dash, after taking LCM and solving, H dash will be equal to 15 plus 16 upon 4. Okay. So now H dash will be equal to 31 upon 4 centimeter. Okay. So this result gives us apparent depth of the coin when viewed from the above. So now let's focus on finding the value of alpha. The problem states that apparent depth of the coin is expressed as alpha divided by 4 centimeters. Okay, so problem states that the apparent depth of the coin is alpha upon 4 centimeters. Okay, so here we have that alpha divided by 4 equals to 31 divided by 4. We have calculated the apparent depth as 31 upon 4. And in the question it is given that apparent depth will be expressed as alpha upon 4. Okay, so therefore alpha upon 4 equal to 31 upon 4. So that means alpha is equal to 31 here. Okay, so we found the answer. So this is all about JEE PYQs of chapter Ray Optics and Optical Instruments. I hope you enjoyed the session and understood it well. Thank you.